So yeah, what I'm going to talk about is essentially try to answer the problems of why bots are such a hard problem to solve. And this stemmed out of talking to a whole bunch of security professionals that maybe this is more of a niche side of the industry that everybody that has a website has a problem with. So, and sometimes it's even for security professionals, they haven't seen this story. So I'm hoping to paint that picture and give you some insight into, how the bots have changed, what's some of the mitigation techniques, yeah. So I'm not going to give you salesy type stats stuff. I grabbed, these aren't reports, I work for Fastly, these aren't reports from Fastly, these are just various industry people, but I put them here to highlight, firstly, a couple of things, is that account takeover is probably one of the most common threats that any website faces as a result of bots. The account takeover is uniquely suited to automation. And if you look at some of the other bot vendors that have published some reports, over half the internet traffic roughly is a result of automation, and a good portion of that is malicious. So it doesn't matter how big or small your website is, your website has an automation problem. It's just a matter of, is it worth the while of the bad actor to spend time and money to try to get something out of your website, really? There's lots of different varying degrees of that. So I'm going to walk through some of that. So firstly, what is an automated threat? Automated threat is another term that's used for bots. It's sort of, bots is like a small subclass of automated threats, really. And an automated threat really is something different to, if you think of like a web exploit, a hacker is trying to use a vulnerability within a component of a website to be able to gain either privilege, remote access, a shell, whatever it may be. That's not the case with an automated threat. Automated threats are targeted against the business logic of your website. So core functionality that you have to expose to make the website useful. Think of an e-commerce site. Think of any finance. Think of any sort of site that has a user login. Then that's a minimum sort of thing that you need to present to staff, customers, various different people to log into. And these are targeted by automated threats. And oftentimes, it's not until the attacker gets in that you can discover that they're actually malicious. It's harder to discover, unlike if somebody's trying to exploit a CVE against your website, that's pretty easy to detect before it actually gets exploited. Whereas an automated threat, if somebody's using bots to automatically log into a website or to go to Ticketek to go and grab that ticket before you want it, before you get it, then you don't normally discover that until they sort of start becoming abusive and doing things that are outside the regular user activity. And by that stage, they're already in. So that's why automated threats are a hard thing to solve. And if you look at the sophistication of the attacker, there are various different degrees of sophistication. I've sort of simplified it into what I view as the 3 different types, where you've got normal recon automation. So that's where, if you put any sort of scanning tool on the or website on the internet and you've got a WAF or something or a web firewall in front of it, it'll get scanned within minutes. There's no doubt about that. There are legitimate scanners on the internet. There are security researchers. There are vendors, security vendors. They're all scanning the internet, trying to find things to feed their reports and information. But it's also a way to, it's like the early stages of a web attack as well. First, you need to find the application on the internet and then just start discovering what it's made up of. So these are fairly basic off-the-shelf tools that people have written. You can go to GitHub and search pretty much anywhere you like and for any type of scanner, and you'll see there's hundreds of different scanners for different use cases. And then there's self-contained ones like Kali Linux, which is a great little security testing Linux distribution with all the tools in there already. I use that all the time. It's awesome. And then you have like various different commercial and open source ones like Nessus and Metasploit and all that sort of stuff. So you don't need any level of knowledge or sophistication to use these. And straight away you can start scanning websites and applications to try to understand if they are vulnerable to any sort of malicious attacks. The next one is semi-professional. So that's where you go beyond just, I know nothing, I'm going to grab the tool and let it do everything for me. Semi-professional automation is about, you're starting to use a bit of programming knowledge. Maybe you're writing some Python scripts and stuff like that to start getting more sophisticated views of the website, trying to launch automation, trying to grab those credentials that you just downloaded off the dark web to try to see if somebody has reused their passwords, which unfortunately many people don't do that. And so you typically that sort of level is really focused on account takeover. That's the biggest use case. It could be web scraping as well. It's another common use case for bots trying to scrape information from websites that to get around even like API controls, commercial API. Exposing of data, like I'm sure everyone's seen Reddit and stuff like that with the API thing. They're starting to charge lots of money now for using their API to get data. So actors are just going to move to web scraping, and then they can bypass the API, and then Reddit servers are going to be hammered. But anyway, I digress. And the last one is the more professional automation. So this is where you have the ability to be able to go one-on-one with the security controls that are in front of the application that you're attacking. So typically based around financial fraud, there's a real big return on investment for an attacker if they know they can get lots of money coming back from it. So that's when you'll see the level of sophistication go up. The attacker will create customized bots. They'll, if there's controls that have been put in place, maybe some rate limiting controls, IP blocking, all that sort of stuff, they'll just start retooling and working around that to be able to get around that, because there's a return on investment. They'll spend money to be able to certainly infiltrate things like e-commerce and banks and anything that's going to give them So if we look at the attacker ecosystem and how diversified this is now, pretty much every stage of an automated threats lifecycle can be outsourced. So you want to get stolen credentials, you can there's plenty of both underground and exposed forum with a whole bunch of dump credentials that have been exposed. You hear about credentials being stolen all the time from companies. So you can go and grab that stuff, and then you want to maybe to get around some controls, maybe geolocation controls, rate limiting controls. You want to start pumping it through a whole bunch of proxies across the world. So it's really easy to stop somebody if we're getting like 1,000 requests per second coming from one IP address. That's really easy to spot. So you spread it out all across the proxies. I say this like I'm telling you how to do it. But this is what's happening. And you can buy proxy servers really, really cheaply. And in part of my demo later on, I'm going to show you this. And by the way, all the disclaimer is, all the stuff I'm showing you, I don't condone doing this, and I'm not showing you anything illegal. I'm just showing you how easy this is to do. This is the whole idea about what I'm trying to show you. So if I look at things like Storm Proxy, this is a website. Again, I'm not promoting any of this stuff. You can buy like 700,000 reverse IP proxies that will change every HTTP request. So if your main control for your stopping automated threats is around IP or geolocation, forget about it. If there's a return on investment, they're going to spend the $50, $60 to grab a whole bunch of proxies and just get around whatever solution that you put in place for reverse proxy. So and there are, I could give you lists and lists of free proxy services, as well as, like if you wanted free ones, you can, sorry, where is it? Free proxy list. You can just go to, there's a whole bunch of these. They're really unreliable. Most of them don't work, but you can go in here, download all this information, stick it into your tool, and then do it. So again, if the return on investment's there, they'll use the paid services. If not, they'll just use the free stuff. It's still viable. Now, you need a tool like a login behavior simulation tool. So things like Browser Automation Studio, OpenBullet, things like that. I'm going to show you about this in a second. So these are the tools that you can plug in credentials, plug in proxies. You configure it for the login of the website or whatever else you want, and then you just press go. And it will go and just blast all those credentials at the website. So I'm going to demonstrate this. I've got actually OpenBullet up, running and ready to go. And you might think, well, what if there's a capture service in place? So everyone loves to hate capture, I'm sure. Nobody likes capture. So they just use capture solving services. Capture solving services are so cheap, and basically you go and buy something from these capture solving services. They'll give you an API key. You plug it straight into things like OpenBullet, and then it will automatically bypass any capture that the attacker is trying to get around. So for under $100, you can put a pretty sophisticated sort of account takeover solution in place. And it's not just account takeover. I'm using that as the common sort of use case, but it could be lots of things like web scraping and stuff. So when I talk to customers all the time. I'm a security strategist for the APJ region for the company I work for. And people wonder, like, am I a threat? Like, why would somebody come after me? The usual sort of story as security professionals we hear all the time. It's like, hey, I'm small, I've got nothing here. Why would anyone want to come after me? So, and I always bring it back to this. It doesn't matter how big or small you are. It's about what you're trying to protect. So it's about threat mapping. What does your threat look like? Who are the people that are trying to come after you? And what is the crown jewels that you're trying to protect as well? So, firstly, what are the assets? Like, is it PII you have to worry about? Is it if you're an e-commerce site, then there's like store information and things like that. Who are the bad actors? Like, who would be the people that would target you? Like, if you're in a government space, maybe you're getting targeted by like nation-state actors where the level of sophistication is extremely high. Or, if it's an e-commerce, ticket tech, airline industry, government, or anything like that, then you're going to be targeted by different people. So, and then they'll have different resources and they'll have different level of sophistication. So it's really just about understanding what that threat is. What are the motives? What resources do they have, as I said, and what is the outcome they're trying to achieve? Why would somebody try to attack me? Is it all those things around money? Is it hacktivism? People are wanting to deface, the site, etc. So you should be doing this for all across your security controls, not just bots. But this exercise, it makes it really clear, I think, to people in the security field and the security ops teams that have to protect against this stuff. And there are a whole bunch of I won't go into that rabbit hole. So there's a great tool by OWASP called the Automated Threat Handbook. Has anyone seen this before? Anyone? One, two, a couple. So the Automated Threat Handbook is a great thing to sort of then go on. After you've threat mapped the environment, then you can move to looking at something like the OWASP Automated Threat Handbook to be able to understand, what are the issues that you may be facing on your website, what are the mitigation controls. And there's a whole bunch of them here, and they cover all the different scenarios that a website could face. So I just wanted to dive in. I'm not going to explain all this stuff. I just wanted to show you some good examples of how this is a great utility. So for capture defeat, for instance, it then talks about what the problem is, what are the things that you can do to test it, and what are the things to do for mitigation. So I encourage you, if you haven't seen this and you're in charge of securing any sort of internet-facing application, to just go through this stuff and see what's relevant. Sniping's not relevant for some websites, but it's definitely relevant for all like e-commerce type websites, for instance, because it's about people coming in, grabbing that item before anybody else can buy it. So let's have a look at some likely targets for bots. I tend to use some real examples just to give people some more visualization about what the problem is. And you can see the two likely suspects for certainly e-commerce. eBay and Amazon, this is nothing to do with them specifically. It's really just highlighting some of the areas that if you're looking at, okay, what could be targeted on my website, these are the type of things. So you've got, I can't really see up there. Can you see my mouse? Yeah, you can. So, you got, if you're looking at like the eBay example, you've got account takeover threats for your login pages and registration pages as well. We talk to customers who are getting tremendous amounts of spam from bots trying to just do bulk registration of accounts. And a lot of times people do that, like certainly on an e-commerce site where you might go, hey, there's a $20 discount for sign up for new members. So you get a bot that just says, okay, I'll go and create 1,000 accounts and now I've got all this extra codes that they can do something with. Maybe they'll sell it for $5 whatever monetization they can put out of it. There's a whole shopping cart thing there, and I'm going to talk about some of this in a minute. Gift card fraud is a huge big thing for e-commerce where bad actors will go and get a whole bunch of stolen gift cards or even credit cards from the internet, typically darknet sites. And to see whether they're valid, you create a bot that just gets that whole bunch of codes, slams it against the website to check the account balance. And if anything comes back as an account balance, you know that it's a valid credit card. So they're just using your website to validate stolen credentials, stolen credit cards or gift cards. So that's a huge big problem in that space as well. And web scraping, the bottom right-hand example, is competitors will come along and scrape the pricing information and inventory information from third party. We get that a lot. And I know if you've ever read the history of Amazon, that's how they started. They scraped their competition. They undercut prices for every product, and that's how they got their volume. And if you map this back to the OWASP Automated Threats handbook, then there's a whole bunch of things that you can sort of associate to each different area. So when you log in, you've got things like account aggregation, capture defeat, credential cracking, credential stuffing, etc. So now there are various different nuances between what credential cracking and stuffing is. I won't, in the interest of time, I won't go through that here, but read the OWASP Automated Threat handbook. It's great. Account creation is a big thing as well. So when you're looking to secure, your application, you'd be trying to protect these endpoints. So you don't necessarily have to protect, a static website, a web page, necessarily for regarding sophisticated bots, but certainly the areas of your website that are really going to be targeted, they're the things that you can put extra controls around. If you wanted to buy those $15,000 Louis Vuitton Nike Airs, then you've got to get in quick. And so let's have a look at some of the types of browser automation tools, because there are plenty, and they all started from, they pretty much all started from a valid use case. If you're a developer, you need to create your website, and you need to be able to do testing. You need to be able to make sure that the user experience is going to work. And so oftentimes, in the early days, you used to have to create scripts to be able to just do synthetic traffic across all the different workflows within your application. But that's become a whole different industry in itself. Things like, there's like Browser Automation Studio, which is on the top left. This is a full visual IDE that allows you to create a bot, essentially. And it's open source, it's on GitHub. And it really makes the work of creating a bot really easy because you're not having to code. All you're doing is getting the specific modules, plugging it into the workflow that you want to do, and then pressing, send. There are tools like Selenium. Selenium is a very popular tool. Selenium, Puppeteer, they're things that they do have a GUI as well, but they're primarily driven by code. And so you can see in this example that I got from the Selenium website, you can code in Java, Python, C#, Ruby, JavaScript. So there are lots of ways that you can fit it into the developer environment. Now, that's great for doing your valid testing, but also it's incredibly easy for bad actors to start doing some of this stuff as well. As always the case, if there's a malicious use case, it generally gets exploited. And I love the sort of gray sort of nature of the Selenium marketing. Selenium automates browsers, that's it. Whatever you do with it, it's up to you. In other words, they know damn well what people do with it. And then you have on the to the extremes where you have OpenBullet, which I'm going to show you, which is a very sophisticated tool that has no real valid use case that they've tried to even pretend. It's scary. So we look at I was grabbing some news reports and I thought I'd show you, there's more and more things in the press about, hackers are increasingly using these browser automation tools because they are convenient, they're easy. The level of sophistication and knowledge you need around programming is a lot less. And if it's too difficult to do all that, then all you just do is outsource it. There's again, that whole outsourcing part that I talked about before. You can go to websites. I guess it's up there, like Fiverr or any other websites that have really cheap labor. Oftentimes, there's a whole bunch of really talented programmers there offering their services, and they'll code whatever you want. So, and all you have to do is go to these things and type in, web scraping or account takeover or whatever, and there's a whole bunch of people here who are more than willing to, for very cheap, when you look at the prices, I can build a bot scripting tool, browser automation, $50 Australian. That's not too bad for potentially the payoff there. There are a lot of free tools as well. A lot of forums that have configs specifically for each of these tools, like a Browser Automation Studio tool, OpenBullet, etc. The people who, there's even a subscription service to things like OpenBullet where they'll keep evolving the config so that as the website changes or it gets more controls in place, like maybe they've introduced capture or things like that, they'll just update the configs and as part of the subscription. So it's pretty scary. And buzzword bingo, ChatGPT. It's more and more becoming a use case as well. I mean, I won't get into my thoughts on what ChatGPT holds, but the fact is that it can actually help a bad actor or anybody do things that maybe you don't really want against your website. You can go in and say, hey, use web scrape this URL with Python and Beautiful Soup, and it'll just give you the code. So it's not that hard to be able to formulate some scenarios that ChatGPT is more than happy for you to distribute, to code for you. And what are some of the motivations for this? So I'm not trying to single out this person, but he's in the news, so he's bad luck. So this was a while ago now anyway, but this person was using tools like OpenBullet and others to be able to grab all these stolen credentials that make their way to the darknet he knows that a large percentage of people reuse their passwords. So he'll go and grab a database credential leak, smash it against like Netflix, any other streaming media services that can easily resell, and there's a lot of money in it as well. Like if you let me show you again, not promoting this stuff, but there's what they'll do. What people like this guy does, he'll go and find, using the tools like OpenBullet, go and find any credentials that are valid out of the thousands or millions or sometimes billions, depending on what the database is, what are valid, and then he can just go and sell them online. So if you look at things like these shops, yeah, they're selling Paramount Plus, UFC, all of these streaming media services for a fraction of what you pay per month, and they're so confident that people are going to reuse their passwords and they can get them again. Oftentimes, you'll see that they're offering a lifetime warranty on that credential. So if you can pay your $5, if that credential ever gets reset, then you just go to him and say, hey, it doesn't work anymore. He'll give you a new one, because there's just so many of them. It's scary. Plenty of other examples like this. I'm not going to go down too far, because oftentimes the websites are not safe for work that they're selling. But you can see, this is easy stuff. There's an outlet. There's a valid outlet for people like this to be able to use these stolen credentials. So this guy made like 680 grand or $500,000, depending on which article you read. That's a pretty good motivation for any person to try to carry out this stuff. So let me go through some of the say common mitigation techniques, or what I call the arms race. So if you look at traditionally, before the bots got really sophisticated, what was adequate was doing server-based controls. So looking at what's coming in through the network, like HTTP headers, geolocation, IP, reputation. You can often tell bots don't generally care too much about like the HTTP RFC, so you can generally tell a lot of suspicious traffic just by the order of headers and a whole bunch of things like that. And so that was really good for a long time. And it's still actually valid signals that you want to use to detect bots today, but generally you want to supplement them with other signals. So what you'll see a lot of dedicated bot vendors now are doing is using client-side telemetry. So they'll have a mechanism to inject JavaScript into the web page and start gathering telemetry. Like what are the mouse movements like? Are you typing keys really fast? And are you logging in within like half a second? If you can log in within half a second, and go straight to like a checkout page, then you're probably not a human. You're definitely not a human. But there are a whole bunch of things like browsers give off telltale signals about if the bot writer is trying to say, okay, I'm going to fake being a Chrome browser, then Chrome has a whole bunch of predefined or very well-defined things that it responds with. The way it renders emojis are specific to Chrome compared to another website, a browser. The way it even calculates really large numbers can be a telltale sign as well. You can evaluate what plugins are installed, all this sort of stuff from this client-side thing. So even resolution of the screen, you can get that from these client-side signals, because the browser will tell you what resolution it is. So if you're logging into like a banking website and your resolution is like 1 pixel by 1 pixel, there's no way you're a human. So things like that are more and more important to supplement the server signals. And so it's this bit of an arms race where you've got the security professionals putting in things like IP deny lists, rate limits, geo-blocking, user agent detection. So if it's got a weird user agent or an old one, you might see that as an anomaly. Signatures for specific bots that are being deployed. and attackers just adopt. The sophisticated attackers, even not so sophisticated as I showed before, you can easily buy things like proxy services. So if there's, I keep on talking about a return on investment. If it's worth the while for that attacker to do it, they're going to invest the time and money to be able to get around the controls that are in place. And so they've got more sophisticated. So you might say, okay, well, I'm going to just detect, if somebody's typing really quickly, like if you can type your full name, address, email address, and password into a user registration page in under like a second or half a second or whatever, then you're automated. So you can start putting controls around that. So what the bot writer started to do is, okay, we're going to introduce artificial delays inside the typing so I'm not being detected. So that's the first example where it's just putting in random intervals to try to look more like you're a human. You can rotate user agents. That's a common thing. You can, and this is the IDE of Selenium I was talking about before. It's a plug-in to the browser. All you do is press record. You log into the website and press stop, and then it has written a script for you, basically, which you can then use for other things. So attackers are getting more and more, it's getting more and more easy to do this stuff. And captures. So captures are the thing that is almost like the last resort. Like, hey, I can't figure out anything to do with this, so I'm just going to put a capture there. It's an absolutely terrible user experience. Everybody hates it. I know I've been in this situation. I'm sure everybody else has. Like, do you mean that little bit over in the other box? I literally had a capture form yesterday with a very similar thing. So, there's often another side to capture as well, and I won't get on my soapbox. I've only got a couple of minutes, but if you're have some sort of disability that makes it harder for you to interact with websites and stuff, then captures are just the worst thing in the world, because it can actually lead to people with disabilities not being able to get into websites and stuff like that. So, and as I said before, there are capture solving services aplenty. These capture solving services like this, and they support all the modern captures, because there's a lot of various versions of capture. You can do professional, standard, light. So they've got tiers. It's like a capture vendor. They even have SLAs. If you go to their website purely for research, then you can see they've got real-time graphs about how many people they've got solving captures, because these are actually human people solving these captures. It's not automated. So you're actually, when these capture services receive a request from your automated tool, they will actually go and do the solving capture and press send, and then it'll send back the result, because the result of a capture is just like a code essentially that gets sent back. Yeah, it's pretty scary. Let's see me after. No, I'm joking. I showed storm proxies before. And there are ones that are even evolving for this. There are dedicated web scraping is one of the hardest problems to solve in automation, and there are dedicated services like this one here that are ML based, and they guarantee that they'll be able to web scrape anything. It's pretty scary as well. So this stuff is easy. All it takes is a bit of money, and then you can plug it in. And rotating reverse proxies, hitting a website. You've got geolocation and rate limiting. You can buy this stuff into whatever region you like if you want. If you know that there's geolocation for an application you're targeting, you can use VPNs or anything. Like geolocation is it's basically security theater, if you ask me. But and multi-factor authentication is a great use case. A great way to mitigate a lot of this stuff. Certainly when we're talking account takeover, but it is also getting targeted as well. And we're seeing more and more incidents of sophisticated attacks that are trying to bypass MFA. Whether that's the recent examples I'm sure everyone's heard of, where the attacker had the username and password, but there was an MFA, and they just kept pressing log in, log in, log in. And so the person at home asleep was getting like, hundreds of sign in, yes or no on their MFA token. And eventually they just wanted to get rid of it, and they just pressed yes. And then straight away they got in. And so I'm sure you know the company I'm talking about. If not, yeah, Google it. But there are other like proxy man-in-the-middle services that can also capture MFA tokens. So you've got typically like 30 seconds or whatever it is to be able to use them. So if the attackers are online, and it's a sophisticated enough attack, then they can grab those the MFA tokens and reuse them straight away. I was going to show you Genesis Market, but it got taken down. So here's the stuff I had before it got taken down. So another way to get around MFA and a lot of security controls is if you have all of the browser cookies and basically the whole browser environment, then a lot of times if you log into Duo or any other MFA, you have the option to say, hey, don't ask me again for 7 days, 30 days, depending on how your security team have configured it. So that's just stored in a cookie, right? So if you've got that cookie on your browser and you're emulating that browser or that person's browser, then it won't ask you for an MFA token. So there was a website called Genesis. I'm sure there are others coming around where they gave you. It was just a matter of going searching. Hey, I want a Windows 11 Chrome browser from Australia or New Zealand, and you can just search on which websites it's already got the cookies for, and then they actually, scarily enough, they gave you if I look at the next page, they gave you a browser plugin which automatically installed the thing you just bought. So you could buy these were quite expensive because they were actually working and valid, and they had a whole bunch of saved passwords in them as well. So it's just a matter of click, download security, you can see up there, and then just jump in it, go straight into the plugin, and then the browser just emulates the fingerprint that you just downloaded. So that was a pretty scary, but yeah, recently got taken down by, I think it was FBI or someone. There's another pretty cool tech that's starting to emerge. It's called private access tokens. It was announced by Apple 2 years ago. And it was part of a working group with Apple, Fastly, Cloudflare, and a few others. Oh no, that was the three main vendors. And what it does is basically it says, okay, I've already got a device here that knows everything about me almost. I can't get into the device without using my biometric. Or a PIN number already to get in. It knows I have an iCloud account. I can't get an iCloud account without some sort of verification. So already I have a device here that trusts me as being a human. So why not make that able to be used in a website? So if you're logging into a website that has the private access tokens enabled on it, then it will just go and send off a request to a third party. Firstly, it sends it off to the attester, which is the device itself. It will then go and send it off to another third party to create the token, and then it will get sent back. And again, it's too long a topic, but it encrypts at each stage so that the issuer of the token never knows what website it's for. It just knows that it trusts the attester and it needs to do this token. The attester never knows what website it's for either, and so it's sort of like separation of duties, and there's privacy built into the thing. Now since this was first released, this has evolved. This started from a RFC called Privacy Pass. Funny enough, it evolved from Privacy Pass, then Privacy Pass sort of got huge. Now that's really the standard. It's sort of expanding on the use case that you could do with private access tokens. But I think it's, the older I get, the more I worry about privacy. So anything like this is great. And the privacy pass is now, it has not only Apple, Fastly, Cloudflare, it has the Brave browser as part of it. It has Google as a core member of the team as well. And Google are Google are doing a lot actually to try to improve privacy of both their ads and other things as well. But I'm happy to talk to you at our stand about that. Yeah, so it's another emerging technology. It's built into every Apple device now. It's sort of one thing you can sort of test out really, but you'll see it more and more into the mainstream. So before I get into my demos, yeah, so I've got to do a shameless plug. Come and see us at the Fastly booth if you want to talk about bots. I could talk about bots all day. So firstly, let me show you one thing. So I want to show you what, firstly, the evolution of some of these tools. Coincidentally, I'm using a VPN back into my home in Sydney across my 5G tether, so the internet gods are smiling on me because it's still working, the demo gods. So this is one thing. This is one of the first mass GUI-based account takeover tools. So it gives you the ability to be able to just create configs using a GUI. You would go through and generally what the website is. You could go through, you can configure things for what the username and password looks like in the HTTP post request. A whole bunch of things. I won't get step by step in here. You could go through and cycle through the headers for not only the headers, you could set the headers, but you could also cycle through user agents as well. You could go and access the proxy settings. I stupidly put in a lot of proxies here, so it's really slow. You can go and determine what fake settings you want, whether you want to alter the fingerprints, do a whole bunch of things like that. Then you go and add your lists in there. What proxy servers do you want to use? What word lists you want to use? So these are the credentials that you're after. And then you'd go through, again, this is the really big list, so I should have chose a small list, but yeah, there you go. And then you could go through, once you click start, it would go through and show you like a nice GUI progression of what credentials have passed, what failed, etc. Then came the first iteration of OpenBullet. Now, OpenBullet this is the Windows-based tool that really changed the game, in my opinion. So if I show you some of the things here, so firstly, we can set up our proxies. By the way, in case you are thinking of using some of these proxies, because these are actually valid, I actually paid for them. I'm going to cycle through all the passwords and proxies as soon as I end this, so don't even worry about trying to capture these IP addresses. Or I know there's a username and password there. I'm in security. Anyway, so this made a great. So all you have to do is dump in your proxy list that you get either legitimately, or I guess is there a legitimate way? Yeah, I guess maybe. And then you can click on check, and it will go through, and then you can see the date will. Yeah, so you can see the time is flicking down. So I've basically said, I've grabbed these proxies, I've dumped them in, now go and check them for me. You then go and add in all your word lists that you have. You can tell it, is it credentials, is it email, is it URLs, etc., because you can use them for various different forms. And then you go and create your config. So I've got a couple of different configs here. And this is what I think changed the game for me, is that you would then go and tell it what to do. Say, okay, I want to first make a request, and this is to my demo website. But I know when I log in, my website uses like a special login nonce that I have to capture, and because it generates every time I open the page. So I just go in, okay, I want to go and grab this particular, you're basically telling it which location. And then now you want to go and do the post request. You paste in like the details that you want to use. Then you can do a check. Hey, if I've seen these keywords, it's successful. If I haven't, then, or if I see these other words, it's not successful. And if I open this up and just some of the things we can do, like there's a whole things like an automatic built-in solve capture one. If you've got a capture service you've bought, you can just plug the API in. You can go through and do a lot of things here, and if you switch to Lolly script, you can just code this as well. So if you didn't want to use the GUI. Now that was sort of version 1, and it worked pretty well. What they've done now is brought out a version 2, which is like a full web-based, really sophisticated version of this. So again, it looks very similar. If I go into my config here, I'm doing a similar sort of things. But what I have here is some other more intelligent stuff. So if I look at, firstly I'll show you, I can do things like, okay, I want to randomize my user agent. So every time I connect to this application, I want to randomize my user agent. I can come in and change what do I want to look at. Do I want to just do every random, or do I want to specifically target like desktops or mobile or specific? And then it's a similar sort of thing before. So I can go in here and then I can just, before I do a mass execution, I click on start. It will go through. I'm running. The resolution is killed me. Anyway, I'll show you. So now we have a similar thing here where we can go through and determine what proxies are working. We can even add proxy groups if we like. So you might have some free, some paid, some SSL, SOX proxies, etc. And then you go and create a job. Like so, if I look at what I showed you before, so if I want to determine any of these proxies I've just plugged in work, I go and tell how many bots. Click on edit job. Click on start. And you can see on the left-hand side here, you'll see I've got 100 bots in total. I've tested 5, 6. You can see which are working, which are not. And as soon as it finishes that list, there's an option there just to cull anything that's not working, and there you have a prune tested proxy list that you can use for your bot. So I'll go back to one I've created earlier, and so now I can go and put them all together to launch an attack against my website. So I select the config. These are the configs that I've configured. I'll put that at 0. Over here I've chosen a word list. So this is essentially just a whole bunch of credentials that I've gathered in whatever mechanism that I've done that. I've chosen to use some specific proxies, and then you can output based onto a database, a flat file. You can send it off to like a webhook. So you could send, like that Shopee store that I showed you before. There are bad actors who are doing this credential stuffing. Anything that's valid just automatically gets sent to the Shopee store and automatically put onto for sale. So it's yeah, scary. So if I launch this brief demonstration, then I'm finished. And so you can see I've tested, and you can see it fails. So we'll just cycle through the credentials until it found one, and then it's go, okay, this is a success. So it knows that these credentials work for this website, and it will just keep cycling through, and ultimately just give you a big list of working credentials for the website that I've just configured. So it's in another one. And by the way, this is my test website, so I'm using just a simple Grab CMS web. I've got a login page there. So what it's actually doing is smashing this page. What I wanted to show you just before we go, and have I run out of time? So I've got this behind the Fastly Next-Gen WAF, so a web application firewall, just to show you some visibility. So we can see here the login attempts against this website. It's cycling through different proxies. So it's got like this one's from Honduras, this one's United States, this one's a different address. Oh, there's Romania. You can see that it's cycling through user agents as well, because I've told it to random user agents. So we can see Windows NT here, Linux here, etc. So there are some new technologies that you can utilize for this stuff. You can see we're actually doing a TLS fingerprint against all of this stuff. So in the case of the Fastly WAF, we can actually detect all the proxy changes and IP address changes because the fingerprint's the same. It's still the same device that's making a TLS connection. But anyway, so yeah, sorry, I've talked way too long, so I better stop here. So hopefully you enjoyed a bit of a view into some of the tools and changing landscape for bots.